At Christmas, everything felt normal until it didn't. It was Christmas Eve in Dayton, Ohio. The fireplace was glowing, the scent of cinnamon and roast ham filled the air. And Bing Crosby played softly in the background. Laura had brought her fiancé, Michael, to meet her family, Evelyn, her ever-smiling mother, and Robert, her quietly detached father. Her younger sister, Natalie, was already there in a sleek beige coat, sipping red wine like a holiday catalogue model. For Laura, these visits were always awkward, like slipping into clothes that no longer fit, but she smiled through them for Michael's sake. He was steady, observant. The kind of man who notices when something's just off. After dinner, Evelyn did what she always did, pulled out the old photo albums as if they were some spontaneous treasure. Everyone played along. But as Michael flipped through the pages, his demeanor shifted. He froze, his fingers tightened around Laura's hand. Then he whispered something that would haunt her for years. "Can't you see it?" Laura couldn't not. At first, but Michael's eyes didn't lie. Something in those childhood photos wasn't right. In that warm living room, surrounded by familiar smells and fake smiles. A single sentence cracked open the life Laura thought she knew. The evening had started like any other holiday. It would end with her questioning everything, including who she really was. Laura stared at the photographs long after the family gathering had ended. They were now spread across her dining table like puzzle pieces that no longer fit together. At first glance, the snapshots looked perfectly normal: childhood birthday parties, visits to local parks, a trip to the Smoky Mountains. But with Michael's words echoing in her ears, "Can't you see it?" she began to notice what he had. Her face, though in different settings and outfits, never changed. The same smile, the same head tilt, the same lighting. It was as if someone had copied and pasted her expression onto every photo. And then came the aching realization: she had no memory of those moments, not just a few missing details, none. Laura couldn't recall her third birthday, her first day of kindergarten, or even the name of her childhood dog. Her earliest clear memory was standing in a brightly lit government office, holding Evelyn's hand while a man behind a counter asked questions she didn't understand. Laura was 5. The language was English. She didn't speak it yet, but she remembered the look on Evelyn's face. Smile. Pretend this is normal. Laura had always believed the gap in her memory was the result of trauma. Her parents told her often, "You were so little during the war," as if that explained everything. "Your mind protected you," they said. "You're lucky not to remember." She carried those words like a coat that never quite fit. But now, in the quiet of her apartment, with Michael gently sifting through the photos beside her, she started to wonder, what if I don't remember, because those things never happened? Michael was calm but deeply concerned. "There are no baby photos," he said, handing her another picture. "No hospital wristband, no newborn shots, no toddler toys in the background. Everything starts when you're already 5. Laura's chest tightened. She had never thought about it before. Evelyn had always said the baby photos were lost during the move, storage flooded. She claimed Laura had accepted that, the way children often accept adult explanations that feel just out of reach. But now she questioned it all. Her childhood had never been warm or messy the way others described. There were no holiday traditions made just for her, no crayon drawings on the fridge, no funny family stories told around the table. Everything had been crisp, orderly, and slightly distant, more like a staged performance than a lived-in life. Meanwhile, Natalie, born 2 years after Laura, had baby books, home videos, and hand-sewn Halloween costumes. Laura had always chalked it up to being the firstborn, the trial run. But deep down, something never sat right. She looked up at Michael, eyes wide. What if I wasn't the firstborn? What if I wasn't born into this family at all? Michael didn't answer right away. Instead, he reached across the table, took her hand, and said softly, "We'll find out together." That night, Laura barely slept. Every ticking second between dusk and dawn brought a new wave of questions. Who was she really? Where had she come from? Why had her memories only started at 5 years old? And most of all, why had her parents lied? In the early morning light, she walked into the kitchen and stood over the photo albums again. What once felt nostalgic now felt sinister. Each page was a fabrication, each smile rehearsed. She felt like a stranger in her own life. Then a whisper of memory surfaced, a fleeting image of a woman with kind eyes and a citrus scent. Not Evelyn, someone else. Laura couldn't place her, but the feeling was familiar, like a song she hadn't heard in decades. And that was the moment Laura knew something wasn't just wrong, it had been wrong for a very long time. The next day, Laura visited her parents. She hadn't planned it. She didn't even bring a coat, just grabbed her keys, still in her slippers, and drove the 10 minutes to the quiet cul-de-sac where she grew up. The house looked the same wind chimes by the porch, the same faded wreath from last Christmas, the same ceramic angel on the windowsill. But everything felt different now. Hollow, like the set of a play where she'd once performed a role she hadn't auditioned for. Evelyn opened the door, cheerful as ever, holding a mixing bowl. "Sweetheart, what a surprise. I was just about to make banana bread. Come in." Laura stepped over the threshold slowly, her eyes scanning the familiar furniture, the framed pictures on the mantel, the smiling photos that suddenly looked suspicious. She saw herself as a child next to Robert in front of a snow-covered log cabin, except now she noticed the odd shadows, the subtle outline around her figure, the way the lighting didn't quite match. That photo wasn't real, and maybe none of them were. Robert peeked in from the den, offered his usual distracted nod, and went back to reading the newspaper like it owed him money. Evelyn motioned toward the kitchen. "Can I get you some coffee? I still have that cinnamon hazelnut blend you like." "I'm not staying long," Laura said, her voice low but steady. Evelyn paused, still smiling, though the muscles around her eyes betrayed a flicker of unease. "Everything okay?" Laura took a breath. "Do you remember what you told me about the baby pictures, that they were lost in a flood?" "Yes, in the old storage unit before we moved here." Evelyn smoothed the front of her sweater, a small nervous tick Laura had never noticed before. "Why, there are no photos of me before age 5. Not one. And the ones you do have Michael and I looked closely, they've been altered." Silence fell like a dropped plate. Evelyn blinked, her hands frozen mid-stir. From the den, Robert's chair creaked. Laura's pulse roared in her ears, but she pressed on. "Why would you fake photos of my childhood?" Evelyn recovered quickly, almost too quickly. "Sweetheart, what are you talking about? That's ridiculous. I'm not asking for an excuse. I'm asking for the truth." Her mother sat down, the bowl with trembling hands. "We didn't want you to feel different. You were so young when we brought you here. You didn't remember. We thought it was better if you thought." Laura's voice cracked. "You thought it was better to lie to me for my entire life?" Robert entered the room then, folding his arms, his mouth drawn in a grim line. "We did what we had to. It was a hard time. You were a child. You adjusted. You had a good life." Laura turned to him, heart pounding. "A good life built on a lie, that's what you're calling love?" Evelyn's voice softened, her tone rehearsed. "You were strong. You never needed much. You were always so independent." Laura closed her eyes. She had heard those words her whole life, and now they sounded like a confession. "We didn't give you much." Her hand shook as she reached into her purse and pulled out 3 copies of the ones Michael had taken. She laid them on the counter. "Same face, same smile, different locations. These are edited. You created a childhood that never happened." Evelyn said nothing. Her shoulders slumped. The mask was slipping. Laura's voice grew quieter, but sharper. "Tell me the truth, all of it." Robert stared at the photos, then met her gaze with something between resignation and contempt. "You were 5 when we got you, that's all. You need to know." Laura stepped back. It wasn't just the deception that cut deep, it was the cold certainty that, if she hadn't found those photos, they never would have told her at all. In that kitchen, surrounded by smells of banana bread and lies, Laura felt the ground shift beneath her feet. She wasn't just uncovering a secret, she was undoing a lifetime. That night, Laura sat cross-legged on the living room floor. Photos scattered in front of her like pieces of someone else's life. The words from her parents, or rather, from Evelyn and Robert, still echoed. "You were 5 when we got you." They had said it like it was nothing. Like acquiring a child was the same as picking up furniture at a yard sale. Michael sat quietly, across from her, laptop open. He wasn't rushing her, just waiting for the moment when she'd say what he already knew. "We need to find her." Laura whispered it finally, more to herself than to him. "I need to know who she was, who I was." He nodded and turned the screen toward her. "We start with the only thing they gave you, her name. Margaret Petrovic, her real mother." The name felt foreign in her mouth, but something about it settled in her chest like a puzzle piece clicking into place. Laura couldn't remember the woman's face clearly, but flashes had returned over the past few nights. Eyes that crinkled kindly when she smiled, the smell of citrus, hands that felt safe. Not like Evelyn's, which had always been efficient, cool, and slightly impatient. They searched through Facebook, online directories, even Serbian community forums. The name wasn't rare. There were florists, retired schoolteachers, and a seamstress in Pittsburgh. Dead ends. But then, one profile stopped Laura cold. The picture was grainy, just a woman in her early 50s with dark hair pulled back and no makeup, no filters, no forced smile. But the face, "She looks like you," Michael said. Laura stared. It wasn't resemblance, it was recognition. The kind that sends a chill down your spine. Same cheekbones, same downward gaze when trying not to cry. The same seriousness that people had always mistaken in Laura for coldness. "No," she said softly, "I look like her." The woman's location was listed as a small town in southern Indiana. The name rang a faint bell Laura remembered hearing it once, years ago, when Evelyn had slipped up in a conversation. She'd brushed it off then, but now it pulsed in her mind like a beacon. They sent a message. It was short, careful, and double-checked through Google Translate. "Hello, I was given your name. I believe you may be my mother." They didn't sleep that night. Laura paced the apartment like the floor might collapse under her. Michael stayed close but gave her space, handing her tea she didn't drink, folding the same blanket twice, just to keep his hands busy. By morning, there was a reply. "Can we talk?" They scheduled a video call that evening. Laura didn't remember agreeing to it. Michael handled the details. She just sat curled on the couch in her favorite throw blanket, trembling in silence as the screen flickered, and then there she was. Margaret looked older than her profile picture, tired, but still strong. Her eyes welled up the moment she saw Laura. Her hand flew to her mouth like she was holding in a scream or a prayer. "I wasn't sure," Margaret said slowly, her voice thick with emotion. "But now that I see you," Laura wanted to say something, anything, but the words were tangled behind the lump in her throat. "I've been looking for you for 25 years, Margaret whispered. "You weren't Laura back then, you were Myla." Myla Petrovic. Myla, the name meant nothing to Laura's memory, but it settled deep in her bones, like a melody she'd forgotten she once loved. "Did you give me up?" Laura asked quietly. Margaret's face crumpled, not dramatically, just this quiet devastation that made the screen blur with emotion. "No, God, no," she said, her voice breaking. "I had to leave you with someone I trusted, just for a few Hours. When I came back, you were gone. She explained how she'd gone to the local municipal office to file final paperwork for their resettlement. She was approved to relocate to the US. Families with children got priority. She was so close. But when she returned, Myla was nowhere to be found. They told me you went with your sitter. But you never came back. I searched. Everywhere, every shelter, every police station. Everyone said kids get lost in war. But I knew you didn't just get lost. And that was the moment Myla understood the full truth. They hadn't taken her out of love. They'd taken her because she was their ticket out that night. Myla sat in silence after the video call ended. The apartment was dim except for the glow of the screen. Now dark and still, Michael had gently suggested she rest, but she couldn't. She didn't want to move. The name Myla circled her thoughts like a wind she couldn't shut out. It didn't sound familiar, and yet, somehow, it felt like coming home. Like an old sweater found in a forgotten box that still fit, even after all these years. But then, the memories began to stir like dust rising in sunlight. Not full memories, not yet. Just flashes, sensations, shadows, a voice that wasn't Evelyn's, softer, warmer. A hand brushing her hair behind her ear, the scent of oranges, laughter. From a different kitchen, in a different language. Then dash another image. A cramped apartment hallway, a stranger's face. She was small, holding someone's hand, not Evelyn's, a woman she now knew was her mother, Margaret. The woman had bent down and said something gently in Serbian. Words Laura couldn't translate but understood all the same. This is your babysitter. She remembered now. The first time she saw Evelyn was not in a hospital room. It was in a hallway, where she appeared, smiling, not as a mother but as an arrival. Laura's breath caught in her chest. More flashes came, her crying, pulling on. Her coat, saying I want mama. And a voice scold, American, stern, don't say that again. If you talk about her, you disappear. Laura's whole body tensed. She hadn't remembered that in over 2 decades. Maybe she had buried it. Maybe someone helped her bury it. Then came the worst one. Lying in bed, foreign blankets wrapped tight, her chest heaving. Legs kicking beneath the covers as she screamed into the dark for someone who never came. The woman who smelled like citrus, the one who sang lullabies in a language no one in that house ever spoke again. Laura gasped as her heart pounded in her chest. Her hands flattened against the cold tile floor of the kitchen she didn't even remember walking in. Then Michael found her sitting on the ground, dazed, sweating, her eyes wide with terror. He knelt beside her. It's okay, I'm here. But it wasn't okay, because this wasn't anxiety. This wasn't just trauma. It was a truth clawing its way to the surface, a truth so large it took the air from her lungs. She picked up her phone, her hands shook. Her voice trembled. She dialed 911. The operator answered after a few rings. 911. What's your emergency? Laura opened her mouth. Nothing came out at first. Then, through a voice not fully her own, she said the words that had been buried. Beneath years of lies and fake Christmas photos, I think I was kidnapped. There was a pause on the line. Then the operator's voice softened, calm but alert. Mum, are you safe right now? I think so. I'm home. It happened a long time ago. But I just remembered it. Michael gently took the phone. His voice was calm, composed almost to calm, like he was trying to hold the pieces of her together with each syllable. This is her fiancé, he said. She's having a panic attack. But she's also just uncovered some disturbing information, old photographs that appear to be digitally altered, no birth records, and tonight she had vivid memories. She believes she was taken from her birth, family at age 5, possibly from another country. This would have happened over 25 years ago. The operator stayed professional. What's your address? I'll forward this as a welfare check and notify our investigations unit. Someone will follow up. If anything changes, if either of you feels unsafe, call us back immediately. Michael nodded, thanked her, and ended the call. Laura was still trembling, but now it was different. Not just fear recognition. The words had been said out loud, to someone who didn't call her crazy or tell her to forget. For the first time, it felt real, not just in her heart. Not just in the faded edges of memories, but in the eyes of the law. And now there was no turning back. Laura didn't sleep that night. After the call to 911, something inside her had shifted, like a door finally unlocked. She wandered from room to room in her apartment, as if walking through someone else's life. She folded laundry she didn't remember starting, wiped down the countertops 3 times, and stood in the shower until the water turned cold. Nothing felt real anymore, not the furniture, not her reflection, not even her name. Michael stayed nearby. He made chamomile tea she couldn't drink and kept glancing at her like she might vanish if he looked or ate a long. By morning, an email arrived from the local police department. A case file had been opened. An officer would be in touch. But Laura didn't wait. She opened a blank document and began listing everything she now knew, every contradiction in her childhood, every missing photo. Every lie Evelyn had told so gently she'd almost believed. It was love. That's when it struck her. They didn't raise me because they loved me. They raised her because they needed her. She thought back to what Margaret, her real mother, had said the night before about being approved for resettlement to the US. Families with young children were prioritized. The system favored those fleeing war zones who could provide for a dependent. A child made their case stronger. A child got you to safety. Laura wasn't adopted. She was the application. Her stomach turned as the weight of that truth settled in. She wasn't a daughter. They hadn't even bothered to create a convincing backstory. Just a few doctored photos, a new name, and the assumption that a 5-year-old wouldn't remember. Asterisk, and in many ways, she hadn't. At least, not consciously. They'd buried the truth under casseroles and photo albums, under school fundraisers and carefully chosen Christmas ornaments. But the cracks had always been there. The way Evelyn never hugged her unless others were watching. The way Robert referred to her as that one when he thought she couldn't hear. The lack of baby pictures, the tight-lipped answers about extended family. The coldness that passed as structure. She remembered asking about grandparents once. Evelyn had smiled and said, "They're gone, honey, war does that." But Natalie had a grandmother who sent birthday cards. So why didn't she? Because Laura had never belonged to them. Not really. She had been inserted into a story already in progress, a new character who wasn't allowed to ask too many questions. Just smile. Just blend in. Just go along with it. For years, Laura blamed herself for the distance. She thought she was too sensitive, too needy, too different. But now she saw it clearly. They had never intended for her to thrive. Only to serve a purpose, to be their golden ticket out of a country collapsing into chaos. Michael sat down beside her on the couch and handed her a cup of tea she finally took. "You okay?" he asked. Laura nodded slowly. "No, but I'm starting to understand." She turned the cup in her hands, her voice barely above a whisper. "They didn't save me. They used me." Michael didn't speak. He just placed a hand gently on her back, steady and warm. It was the kind of gesture Robert had never made, the kind Evelyn reserved for Natalie. The kind of comfort Laura had never known she deserved. She looked down at her list again. There it was in black and white, their citizenship, their safety, their new life, all built on me. It wasn't just betrayal. It was calculated survival, and she had been the tool. She let that truth settle, not to break her, but to finally set her free. Because now, for the first time, Laura knew her life hadn't started at age 5. It had been interrupted 2 days later, the knock came. It was soft, 3 calm, measured taps against the front door. Laura froze in place, a dish towel still in her hands. She wasn't expecting anyone, and somehow she already knew who it would be. Michael appeared behind her, silent but present as always, when she opened the door. Evelyn stood there holding a brown paper bag like she had brought over cookies from a neighbor's kitchen. Robert loomed just behind her, hands in his coat pockets, face expressionless. "We brought that soup you used to like," Evelyn said gently. "The carrot one from when you were sick that winter." Laura stared at her. She remembered that soup. She was 8 and running a high fever. Evelyn had handed her the bowl and said, "You're not dying. Stop crying." She stepped aside, letting them in. She wasn't afraid. Not anymore. She just needed answers. They sat stiffly on the couch, like guests in someone else's home. Evelyn carefully set the paper bag on the coffee table, smoothing her coat over her lap, eyes scanning the room as if searching for safe footing. Robert remained standing, arms crossed, glancing at Michael like he was part of the furniture. "We heard you filed a report with the police," Evelyn finally said, her voice brittle. "I did." Evelyn nodded slowly, then added, "You should have come to us first." Laura folded her arms. "Would you have told me the truth?" No one answered. Michael, still standing beside her, broke the silence. "So it's true, then? She's not your biological daughter." Robert sighed heavily, like a man worn down by traffic or bills, not like someone confronting the reality of having abducted a child. "No," he admitted, "she's not." And just like that, the truth was no longer a memory or suspicion. It had been said out loud. Laura exhaled, not relief exactly, but the weight of finally hearing what she already knew settled her trembling bones. "Your mother," Evelyn said, voice cracking slightly, "was very young. She couldn't take care of you. She begged us to take you when we were leaving the country." "Begged," Laura echoed, her tone icy. "She wanted you to have a better life." Evelyn insisted. "We were leaving Serbia. She stayed behind. It was war. She knew what that meant." "So where is she now?" "We don't know," Robert replied. "It was complicated." Michael stepped forward. "Then why fake the photos? Why erase her from Laura's life completely?" Evelyn lowered her eyes. "You were 5. You cried for her for weeks. It was awful. But then you adjusted. You forgot. We thought it was better that way." "You could have told me the truth," Laura said quietly. Evelyn snapped. "And say what?" "That we took you from your mother. That the life you remember was a fabrication. You would have hated us." "You think I don't." Silence. Then Evelyn reached into her purse and pulled out a worn photograph. Laura, maybe 6, holding Robert's hand outside a government building. "This one's real," she said softly. As if one honest picture could cleanse 20 years of deceit. Laura didn't touch it. Robert stood and looked at her, not with apology, but with conviction. "We didn't steal you. We rescued you." But Laura didn't feel rescued. She felt rewritten. For a moment, a sickening flicker passed through her. What if they're right? What if she had been better off never knowing? But that thought vanished as quickly as it came. She met their eyes squarely. "Then tell me her name." Evelyn blinked like she didn't understand the question. Robert looked annoyed, rubbing his temples like this conversation was giving him a headache. "You were 5. Evelyn said again. "Your memories, they're unreliable. Try me." "Finally," Robert said it. Flat and quiet, like confessing to a long-ago affair. "Margaret Petrovic." That was all they gave her. No address, no number, no apology, just the name they'd stolen from her life. They stood to leave. "We didn't want to hurt you," Evelyn said one last time. "You already did," Laura replied, and when they walked out the door, Laura didn't feel like a daughter watching her parents leave. She felt like a woman reclaiming her name. Laura-Myler- sat at the kitchen table, the name Margaret Petrovic scribbled on a notepad. circled, underlined, surrounded by question marks. She didn't sleep much after Evelyn and Robert no longer mom and dad left. The photo they handed her still sat untouched on the counter, like an apology written in invisible ink. She and Michael started searching that night. Margaret Petrovic wasn't an uncommon name. There were dozens across Eastern Europe, some with full Facebook profiles, others with grainy avatars and timelines that hadn't been touched in years. Laura's Serbian wasn't strong. She knew only enough to talk to elderly church members about desserts. ND weather, but Michael helped. He translated messages, verified towns, chased leads. Most of them went nowhere, but one profile, from a small Serbian town that Evelyn had once accidentally mentioned when Laura was 10. Felt different. The photo showed a woman in her early 50s. With tired eyes, dark hair pulled back, no smile. There were no filters, no selfies, no sparkle, just a face. And what a face it was. She looks like you, Michael whispered. Laura leaned in. Her heart slowed. No, she said, I look like her. They sent a message, formal, careful, checked by Google Translate 3 times over. Hello, I was given your name. I believe I might be your daughter. She didn't expect a reply, but one came the next morning. Can we talk? They arranged a video call for that evening. Laura wrapped herself in a thick blanket and sat in front of the screen, her knees pulled too. Her chest, her stomach twisted in knots. She didn't even remember agreeing to the call. Michael had handled it all. She just stared at the screen like it might erase her or rewrite her again. Then Margaret appeared. She looked older than her. Voto. Her face was thinner, her eyes tired. But the moment she saw Laura, her hand flew to her mouth, her lips trembled. And for a while, she didn't speak. She didn't have to. I wasn't sure. She said at last, but now that I see you, Laura. Couldn't respond. The lump in her throat blocked everything. I've been looking for you for 25 years, Margaret whispered. Your name wasn't Laura back then. You were Mila Petrovic. Mila. The name felt distant yet sacred, like a song from childhood you didn't remember until the chorus played. Laura blinked through tears. Did you give me up? Margaret shook her head, her voice cracking. No, never. I left you with a neighbor while I went to file papers. I was approved for resettlement to the US. Families with children got priority, and I was so close. But when I came back, you were gone. She searched everywhere, every shelter, every border checkpoint, every police station. No one could help her. They told her children disappeared during wartime. They told her to let go. But I knew, she said, I knew you didn't disappear. You were taken. Laura couldn't speak. She just cried. In the following weeks, they filed a report. Together, Margaret brought with her the original missing child, Mila Petrovic, age 5, last seen wearing a red scarf. The same girl now living in Ohio under a name that was never hers. The case didn't go to trial. It didn't need to. The investigation uncovered it all. Falsified documents, forged photos, concealed passports. Evelyn and Robert's American citizenship was revoked. They were deported within 6 months. No appeals. No chance to return. Natalie, her once sister, stayed. She was born in the US and had no legal entanglements. At first, she didn't say much. But one day, she showed up at Laura's door with 2 coffees and simply said, that was really messed up. Not an apology, but something. They talked more than they ever had before. As for Margaret, her real mother, she moved to the States under a family reunification program. Laura and Michael helped her fill out every form, gather every record, write every letter. She now works at a small bakery a few blocks away, surrounded by the smells of flour and sugar and memory. She cried when she got the wedding invitation, and Laura, she's planning her wedding with the man who helped her uncover the truth, not the truth her childhood forced on her, but the one she chose to reclaim. The people who raised her lost everything. when the truth came out, but Laura didn't feel guilty, she felt free. There are moments in life when everything you thought was solid, your memories, your name, even the people who raised you, cracks open to reveal a deeper truth. For Laura, discovering she was never truly Laura wasn't just shocking, it was liberating. Yes, the pain of betrayal ran deep. Yes, the years lost could never be reclaimed. But what she found in their place was something far more powerful, the truth of who she was, where she came from, and who had never stopped looking for her, in finding her real mother, Margaret, and building a future with Michael by her side. Laura finally stepped into her own life, not the one written for her, but the one she chose. Sometimes the truth doesn't arrive in one thunderclap, it arrives in quiet whispers, in photo albums, in a name that suddenly feels like yours. And while the truth may hurt, it is also the path to healing. Your story, your real story matters. You deserve to live a life that's yours, not one scripted by others' needs, fear, or convenience. Have you ever felt like you didn't quite fit into your own story? Has a memory, a photo, or a conversation ever made you question what you once believed? Share your thoughts in the comments below. We read every single one. And if stories like this move you, if truth and healing matter to you, subscribe for more real, powerful narratives that remind us who we are and what truly matters. Because sometimes the most powerful stories are the ones we were never supposed to remember.